Hello and welcome to the Pages to Pixels podcast, where we talk about a new movie every week. I'm Rohan.
I'm Kirtana.
And today we're talking about Cuckoo, the new movie starring Hunter Schafer, which is about a 17-year-old girl who was forced to move with her family to a resort where things are not what they seem.
That's like every horror movie log.
It's a very vague log line, yeah. But overall, kind of what'd you think of the movie?
I'm gonna preface this by saying horror is not my genre. It never has been. It sucks that I'm basically only writing horror and everything I'm writing right now. But I did not enjoy this, like, in the slightest.
Actually, you bring up something interesting, and I want to talk a little bit about that before jumping into my thoughts of the movie.
Sure.
Because you say horror is not your genre, it never has been, you never enjoyed it, but everything you're writing right now is horror.
Because in Hollywood, there's that golden rule that if you want to get a project made, then horror, a low budget horror is the way to go. I think Cuckoo is one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm writing it.
Why do you think that producers find a low budget horror film attractive?
Oh, because I think it has a very loyal fan base.
Yeah.
I think you can make just any horror film you do is going to do well. Now, see, I think the genre has like good stories to tell. Like there is value in the genre. It's just not my genre.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree where, well, low budget horror by definition low budget means it's low budget. It can be made. Yeah, it's made on a small budget and it can be made to pretty decent effect.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to hire super famous actors. Obviously, it helps, but you don't need an A-list cast. You don't need a ton of special effects.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So easy to produce, but then also, yeah, people are gonna go watch it. You can make other movies like low budget dramas also that they don't necessarily get big audiences. So when you look at ROI, that's why. I mean, that's the Jason Blum method. Like that whole company is built on low budget horror. For me, with this movie, I think I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than you, especially because I mean I thought it was super like original because it is not following a traditional. There's not a demon or a ghost in a traditional sense. So I liked that it delivered us something different, and some of the sequences that were like the scary sequences, pretty effective.
I agree with you. They were very effective.
Yeah, I saw your reaction when we went to watch the movie.
I can't stand it. But no, I mean, the fact that I was so affected by it is maybe a good sign for the creators because obviously it was an effective film then.
Yeah.
But that being said, I thought there were a bunch of issues like at every level.
Okay, how so? I think I definitely had less issues than you did.
Let's start with the story like we usually do. I think when a horror has to work, I think it's important that outside of the scare sequences, like the heart of the story needs to be scary. And I don't know if I found the heart of the story here. I think that's my biggest sort of gripe because for context, basically, this family, they moved to like this, like a nook in Germany, like in the mountains.
Yeah, the German Alps.
Yeah, the German Alps, and the parents are trying to build a resort, and they have one daughter and a stepdaughter.
Yeah,
and the stepdaughter is troubled and she doesn't fit in, and then we find out that her mother's died. And like weird stuff starts happening to the stepdaughter. I just feel like maybe I should put it this way. I think I was let down by the weird stuff that happens to the daughter because I thought like where it comes from wasn't convincing enough.
By the daughter, do you mean
the stepdaughter? Sorry, the main character. What's her name?
Okay.
Gretchen is who we're talking about. I just thought that with Gretchen, it was like the reason that these scary things are happening to her, like the reason behind it all was not convincing enough for me to like buy into, which is what I think my largest problem was. The antagonist, for example, it's like, yeah, he has these motivations, but like, why? Like that's the part that I was not convinced with.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of the movie makes sense or it works for me up until the third act, really. because I think it's still kind of a mystery as to what's going on for the first two acts. And then the third act is when they start answering the questions. And when they give you the answers, I feel like I was I ended up being more confused than I was before I got the answers.
No, I agree. I thought the answers were underwhelming because, to be fair to the film, I think the way they set everything up was very effective. I think the way they even showed, like, every time that she was getting hunted down by this cuckoo, they were very scary, very, like you said, very original, like, scary sequences. I still remember the face; it was traumatizing. But the thing is, when they set it up, especially the little time loop thing, like, I was so curious to find out what that was, and they just kind of didn't, like, address it.
I still don't really understand why we were going back in time.
Yeah, is it just that you lose kind of sense of time when the cuckoo calls? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little confusing.
If you're in it for the ride, just for the scares, top notch.
Oh yeah, the scares are great.
I thought the makeup was pretty cool too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makeup and costume. There's just something, and it's super simple. And there's just something very eerie about the person chasing you is not some at the top demon or monster. It's like it's a woman with these like creepy, like red.
It was very creepy, and there's something very unsettling about the horror element not actually being like supernatural. Like, it was a human or a human looking creature.
And I disagree a little bit when you say well, I disagree with you a little bit on 2 points. One is the point you made, the stuff that's not happening outside this, the horror has to be scary. I don't necessarily think it has to be scary. I do think it has to be compelling in some way. And a good example is, in my opinion, Conjuring 2, because when the scary stuff isn't happening, that movie is kind of a romance at heart. So even though the stuff outside this horror sequences weren't scary, for me, the romance element was still compelling.
Right.
2, I do think that there is an element that works for me. It doesn't work completely, but I think that we are meant to identify and or empathize with Gretchen, and there are times when we do, specifically when when she is telling everyone there was a woman chasing her, and people don't see it, and then they don't believe her. And then we even see that she's injured in the hospital after hurting her head, running away from the woman, getting in a car crash because of the woman, and yet her sister is still being prioritized by her parents.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what happens when you have a younger sibling. No, I think Gretchen was a very well written character.
Yeah,
I think it took very little time actually for me to start empathizing with her and like start to root for her.
It took me a minute, but I think I definitely did get there.
The other point you were talking about was about how the base story needs to like be scary or not. It's interesting because I disagree, obviously, but I think I disagree in the sense with reference to this film. I think my difference of opinion comes from the fact that the other story is basically non-existent. Like, there's no like story outside the scares. It's just this family in the Alps. Alps. I think that's kind of where the disconnect started for me. I think another point of like big disconnect was the antagonist. He was creepy though. Like, the minute I saw him, he was creepy.
Yeah. I think that's just because Dan Stevens is a fantastic actor. Also, just I don't know if he is German, but this is the second time that he has spoken German, and from what I can tell, from what I have heard online, apparently his German is perfect.
It was very, very creepy.
Yeah.
I just wish that you have a good actor on board.
Yeah.
I wish the role was better,
That kind of brings me into what I want to focus on, which was, I think where this movie falls apart a little bit is establishing the rules of the world.
Yeah.
Or explaining it to us. Because again, I was mostly on board for the first 2 acts. Third act lost me because when they started answering the questions that I had, it just made me more confused.
I also wish that the exposition actually came from action rather than just like him telling his plan to her.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do. But
Yeah.
I wish that was there. Yeah, right. When the explanations came, it just kind of did start falling
Yeah,
apart.
it just felt a little overly convoluted. I think his plan didn't make sense to me. It's hard to me to explain why, and like what aspects don't work, because I still don't understand what he's trying to do in the first place.
I thought even the other, the FBI, the disgraced FBI
Yeah.
character he had more of a compelling backstory and motivations than who ended up being the main antagonist. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think there was more opportunity there. But I think considering that those two were some of the main characters in this film, I think that leads us quite nicely into the themes of the story, which was supposed to be about like men controlling women and body autonomy and stuff like that. They touched upon it. I feel like they could have leaned harder into it.
Yeah, I agree. And it just, I feel like when they touched upon it, it was one of those moments of let's talk about it. And even some of his dialogue really felt like we have to explain it, that this is a theme. It didn't feel like it connected well to what was actually going on in the story.
Even some of the character work I thought was very it felt very plot heavy. When I say plot heavy, I mean first stuff like the father's character.
Yeah.
Right? Like they needed him to be an asshole
Yeah.
for the plot to work, so he was one.
Yep.
And then there's one point where they even blame Gretchen for her sister having seizures.
Yeah, that also.
And I was like,
there's a lot of, it felt a little far fetched.
yeah, and I mean, see, if that was the reasoning they wanted to give, like lean in harder is my pitch, you know? Like maybe Gretchen did do something that she wasn't supposed to do and it caused Alma?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Alma to start having seizures. Yeah, I think overall it just kind of felt like a little bit of a lot of things without really like doubling down on anything. And
right.
You know, yeah.
I also think that this movie, where I feel like where this movie lost me was in the details. And now sometimes, and that's where, there's macro, which is the general overall picture, and there's the micro, which is kind of details. Usually a good movie, you do both. There are some movies where I will applaud it for attention to detail, but then there's also some movies where, hey, when the details don't work, I can forgive it because of the macro stuff. Right. There's trying to come up with some examples, but Interstellar. That's a movie that I love. People will poke like, hey, there's this plot hole, there's that plot hole. Hell, any time travel movie, there's always like, hey, that doesn't make sense because that's a time travel paradox. And usually for me, it's like I will acknowledge that, and it's like, yes, is it a plot hole in the movie? Yes. Is there something that you might not have understood? Sure. But as a whole, the big picture stuff works for me. Right. Code Geass, one of my favorite shows. There's some episodes where I did not catch every single little detail because there is so much going on, and they don't necessarily explain everything. So it's like, wait, how does that work? How does that make sense? It's like it's like, I don't know. But you know what? As a whole, like the characters, the world, the overall plot works very well. So I don't mind it. Right. Point is, I think if you're gonna have, I think this movie could have worked extremely well, even if we were a little bit confused as to what exactly is happening. If everything else was great, I don't think I would have minded it. Yeah.
You should scoot a little bit. So yeah, what were your guys' favorite scenes in the film?
For me, it's easily the scene when she is on her bike riding home, and that's the first time we see the woman chasing her. I think that scene did very well because there was like, okay, there's going to be a jump scare now. There's going to be a jump scare now, and it didn't happen. And then when it finally did happen, it was super sudden, and we just see the shadow of the woman running behind her. Yeah. That was great. And then they actually reveal the woman, and they have her speed up. And the way it was filmed, it felt like a high speed chase when it's a girl on a bike and then a woman running. Yeah. No, that was a very smartly constructed scene, because when they show us like a glimpse of who's following her, I thought it was the doctor.
And they also kind of tell you that this is like, I don't know, what did they ever mention that it was like an asylum or something, or is it like for people with like untreatable conditions? Like, what was that hospital thing?
I think that there is a real hospital there, but the doctors who work there, like the neighbor that is perform like helping with the experiments and stuff, I think some of them are like a part of the cover up, and part of it is within the hospital.
Yeah.
So we were talking about favorite scenes earlier, and I've been thinking hard since then. I don't really have one that like stood out to me as great, but I will say that the most effective sequences were the ones that when she was at the reception. At the hotel, because like nothing creepy really happens there other than those women coming and throwing up.
Yeah.
But I just thought that it was very well done because I was terrified the whole time. Like it really did keep me at the edge of my seat. I thought it was really cool. That brings me to a question that I had. What time period was this set in, do you think?
I think it was supposed to be modern day.
But all the people were just like they were in the 60s or the 70s. Like even like her even the mother, like her hair is like in pin-up curls or whatever. The hotel has like a phone. Even the car, it has a roll down window.
Yeah.
So picking up on all those things, I thought that it was perhaps like set in the past, or like she's stuck in the past because they do that little time loop thing. But I guess I was wrong.
I think that was more of a stylistic choice. Right. I personally didn't mind it. The reason why I think it's modern is because she does have, I believe there's a scene where she has a phone.
I feel like I've only ever seen her and maybe the bad guy with a phone. Do the parents ever have a phone? I don't remember.
Yeah. But her headphones seemed pretty modern.
Yes.
So.
But then when she got the package, her mother has a answering machine with a tape in it. It kind of took me out of the world a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't mind it.
Okay, so I've got a little game for you guys.
All right.
It's called Horror Trope Showdown. So I'm going to give you 2 horror tropes. You got to tell me which one is worse.
Okay.
All right. The first one is the car won't start, or a cell phone alerts the killer to the person's location.
It has to be the car won't start.
Okay.
Because I've seen it far more often than the phone giving it away. I also think it's just more plausible that a phone would give away someone's location.
That's true.
Yeah.
I am gonna since you said that, I think by default I'll have to go with the phone thing just to make it interesting. And the argument I'm gonna make is especially when it's like young people, you know, like teenagers or someone in their 20s. I feel like they don't keep their phone on ring. Yep. It's always on vibrate.
I don't even remember the last time my phone was on ring.
I don't know what my ringtone is.
Yeah.
Because I just keep it on vibrate.
Next one is a loud jump scare. Or a false jump scare. Like when a cat runs out after a character is looking around.
I think both of them suck. But also I think a jump scare is scary.
The false jump scares annoy me more if they have like the musical note to enhance it. If it is setting something up, and for example it is the cat running out, but there's no musical note, it doesn't bother me as much.
Do you think that, because see, I know we're saying that this is like a false jump scare.
Yeah.
But my question is, isn't that also technically a jump scare?
I think when I say false, it's supposed to be like you think it's gonna be like, oh, the monster's gonna jump out.
Right.
And it is like a cat or just something else that's normal, everyday world.
Yeah, I mean, I hate both of them with equal passion.
And the last one would be no one believes the character when they see something, kind of like with ours, or something that is cute or inanimate is actually evil.
I think I think when people don't believe it, it's worse.
Yeah.
Because it's so frustrating. I think if it's a cute or inanimate thing being evil, that's actually kind of fun.
I agree. I do think that this movie is an exception because I think her not being believed is kind of the point.
Yeah.
But in general, yeah, when the main character doesn't get believed.
Yeah. No, I mean, in this movie, the gaslighting was very, very effective. I was like very frustrated for her.
All right, let's move on to score.
Okay.
Okay. So as a reminder, the way we do our scores here is on the script coverage scale of pass, consider, and recommend. Pass when we don't think the movie's all that great. Consider when we think it's pretty decent. Recommend when we actually really think it's a great movie. This is not an actual recommendation. It's just a score. So how would you rate Cuckoo?
I would say a very, very weak consider. It's just not my genre, and yeah, that's it.
I'm gonna give it a consider. Not a weak consider, not a strong consider. Again, the first 2/3 mostly work. I think they could have been better, but there aren't glaring issues up until the third act where I feel the rules started getting muddled and confusing.
What are your film recommendations for people that may like Cuckoo and want to watch other films that are like it?
I'm going to recommend The Barbarian. I think this movie came out either last year or 2 years ago.
I think it's just Barbarian.
Oh, just Barbarian. I'm going to recommend Barbarian. Movie came out last year or 2 years ago. It was very interesting. Very, again, another unique concept, and it explores relatively similar themes to Cuckoo. In my opinion, I enjoyed Barbarian more. I think the explanations made, even though it doesn't make entire sense, it made a little bit more sense. And I think the overall ride was also a lot more fun because at one point you think it's very comedic and then it's scary and then becomes comedic again.
I think I would recommend Us, Jordan Peele's Us. And it specifically worked for me because the idea of like these doppelgangers like showing up, I thought in its heart was scary, other than the scare sequences.
That new Blake Lively movie, It Ends With Us?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if Jordan Peele didn't make Nope, his filmography, It Ends With Us.
Oh
my god.
I saw that somewhere. It's not my original.
What else have you guys been watching?
So I know I brought it up, I think last week, that I was watching season 3 of The Morning Show. Well, that was like episode 1 or 2 when I brought it up. I finished it. Liked it quite a bit. Have some issues with the ending because I think they present something that is like a great solution, which in my opinion it wasn't.
Right.
But overall, great show. I'm looking forward to season 4.
They've been greenlit, right? Because
yep.
And season 4 is the season with the oil spill.
I guess I don't know. I don't know what season 4 is going to cover.
Okay. No, leaked images from the set were out, and like there's a thing where like Jennifer Aniston is like drenched in oil.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, I didn't see any of that.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that it's kind of related to some oil spill. This week I watched. This is a movie I've watched before. It's a Malayalam film called The Great Indian Kitchen.
Okay.
I watched it this week because it's a comp for something I'm writing. But it's a great movie. It's actually available on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
If people are curious, it's a great film. Everyone should watch it.
Okay.
With that, we come to the end of this week's episode of the Pages to Pixels podcast. I'm Kirtana.
I'm Rohan.
And we'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Thank you.
Thank you.